14 months since I signed those papers. 14 months since I walked out of that glass tower on Bay Street with nothing but a carry-on suitcase and the kind of silence that follows you home and sits at your kitchen table. I told myself I was fine. I made tea. I started running again. I got a library card like I'd been meaning to do for 3 years of marriage. I called my mother on Sundays and said things were good. Really. I was settling in, and she believed me because she wanted to, and I let her because it was easier than the truth. The truth was that I still reached for the right side of the bed in the dark. The truth was that I had memorized the sound of his car in the parking garage, and my body still listened for it some nights before my brain caught up. The truth was that leaving a man like Nathaniel Cross, a man who could buy half of Bay Adelaide Centre and still come home for dinner like it meant nothing, leaving a man like that doesn't free you the way you think it will. It just replaces one kind of weight with another. We had been married for 3 years, together for 5 before that. 8 years of my life, of my 20s, of the version of me who thought love was enough to smooth over the parts that weren't working. He never wanted children. I knew that going in. He said it clearly, early, in that way he had of stating things like facts. Flat and clean, no room for interpretation. I thought I could live with it. I thought I was the kind of woman who didn't need that. I was wrong. But by the time I understood how wrong, I had already built my whole life around his schedule, his apartment, his world, and dismantling it felt like tearing down a house with my bare hands. So I did it anyway. I moved into a rental in Leslieville. Ground floor, exposed brick, a radiator that clanged in February like it was angry about something. I got a job back in landscape architecture, the career I had quietly let slide during the years I spent fitting myself into the shape of his life. I was rebuilding. I was fine. What I did not tell anyone. Not my mother, not my best friend, who kept a bottle of Prosecco in her fridge specifically for my divorce check-ins, not even my therapist for the first 4 months, was that I was pregnant when I left. 7 weeks. I hadn't even been sure yet. I took the test in a gas station bathroom off the 401 because I couldn't bear to do it in the apartment we shared. Couldn't bear to have that news exist in that space. The second line appeared and I sat on the lid of that toilet for a long time and thought about nothing very clearly. By the time the lawyers had finished, I was almost 11 weeks. I made an appointment. Then I canceled it. Then I made it again. Then I sat in my car outside the clinic on a Tuesday morning in November, with the heat running and the radio off, and I thought, I don't want to do this. Not because of him. In spite of him, I wanted this baby. That was the part that surprised me most. How certain I was, how immediate, how much that certainty had nothing to do with Nathaniel at all. This was mine. This small, impossible thing was mine, and I was going to keep it, and I was going to do it the way I did everything else in those months. Alone. And fine, and not talking about it more than necessary. I told my mother at Christmas, when I was far enough along that hiding it was becoming a project. She cried. She asked about the father. I said we were not in contact. She understood, or she pretended to, which is its own kind of love. My daughter was born in May. 6 pounds, 14 ounces, born in a blizzard that broke every record Toronto Hydro had on file, which felt appropriate. I named her Willa, after my grandmother's middle name and a character in a novel I loved in university. She came out with her eyes already open and her fist already curled, and I looked at her and thought, there you are. I've been waiting for you. For 8 months, it was just the 2 of us. 8 months of feeding schedules and sleep deprivation, and learning how to do everything one-handed while she was on my hip. 8 months of my mother driving in from Barrie every other weekend. Of my best friend sending me meal kits and voice messages at midnight. 8 months of Willa growing from a small red creature into a person with opinions about her stuffed elephant and a laugh that started in her whole body. I did not contact Nathaniel. I did not plan to. The night everything changed, it was a Thursday in January. Willa had been fussy all afternoon. Not her usual fussy, but the kind of fussy that has a different quality to it, quieter and more deliberate. Like something hurts, but she doesn't have the words. I checked her temperature at 7. It was high enough that I called Telehealth Ontario, and the nurse on the line asked me a series of questions, and then said, carefully, that given her age and the number, I should probably take her in. The sick kids' ER on a Thursday night in January is its own kind of world. I sat in the waiting area with Willa against my chest, her body radiating heat through both our layers, and I told myself it was probably just a virus. It was probably nothing. All babies get fevers, and I believed about half of it. They took her back within an hour. The doctor was young, quick, efficient in the way that emergency pediatricians learn to be. She asked me questions about Willa's symptoms, her history, whether she'd had any vaccinations recently, and then she looked at her chart and looked at me and said, very gently, that they needed to run a few more tests, and that because of Willa's age and the nature of what they were seeing, there were some questions about family medical history they wanted answered. Is the father available to contact? She asked. There are some hereditary conditions we'd want to rule out. I looked at her. She looked at me. It may not be necessary, she added, but if there's any way to reach him, it could help us rule out a few things faster. I sat with that for a moment. Willa had fallen into an uneasy doze against the pillow. The machines made their small, patient sounds. I said I would try. I had not deleted his number. I had not let myself examine why. I stepped into the hallway and stood under the fluorescent lights and stared at his name on my screen for a long time. It was 9:15. I thought all about all the nights I had sat across from him at dinner and tried to find the right moment to talk about the future, about children, about what we wanted our life to look like, and how he would listen with that particular stillness of his, the kind that looked like patience and felt like a door closing. I pressed call. It rang twice. Yes, his voice. That was all. Just yes, like he'd been expecting a call, just not from me. I said his name. Silence. Nathaniel. I said it again because I didn't know how else to start. I'm at Sick Kids. The doctors need some family history information. It's for a patient. More silence. And then, what patient? It wasn't a question. Not really. There was something in the way he said it. Flat, careful. The way he said things when he already knew the shape of the answer and was waiting to see if you would give it to him honestly. I closed my eyes. Her name is Willa, I said. She's 8 months old. She has a fever and they're running tests and the doctor asked if the father was reachable and my voice stopped cooperating. You're listed, on her birth certificate. I listed you. I had not planned to say it that way. I had not planned to say it at all. The hallway felt very long suddenly. I'm on my way, he said. He hung up. I stood there with the phone against my collarbone and thought, what have I done? He arrived 40 minutes later. I don't know how he got there that fast from wherever he'd been. His condo was in Yorkville, which was not close, and parking near the hospital at that hour was a particular kind of nightmare. But I looked up from the chair beside Willa's bed, and he was standing in the doorway in a dark wool coat, still half-buttoned, like he'd left in a hurry. He looked at her first, not at me, at Willa. He stood there in the doorway and looked at my daughter, the way you look at something you are trying very hard to understand all at once. Feature by feature, detail by detail. And something passed across his face that I had never seen on him before. Something quiet and undone. Then he looked at me. You should have told me, he said. I know. 14 months. I know. He came into the room and sat down in the chair on the other side of her bed, and he didn't say anything else for a while. The nurse came in and he answered her questions. Family history, medical background, his father's side, his mother's side. In the same efficient way he handled everything. He remembered everything. He always did. The test results came back closer to midnight. Viral. A common respiratory thing that was going around half the daycare centers in the city. Nothing hereditary. Nothing alarming. They wanted to keep her until morning just to monitor the fever. But the doctor said she looked good. She was responding well. We could probably go home by 8. I said thank you about 4 more times than necessary. When the doctor left, the room got very quiet. Nathaniel was still sitting across from me. He had taken off his coat at some point. He was looking at Willa the way he had been looking at her since he arrived. Steady, unguarded, nothing like the man who had once told me, in our dark bedroom on a Wednesday night, that he didn't see the point of having children, that his life was full, that he didn't have that need, and could I please not bring it up again as if it were something negotiable. I don't understand, he said finally. Which part? Doff, any of it. He looked at me. Why didn't you tell me? Because you didn't want this. You didn't ask me. You told me, repeatedly. For years. He was quiet. He put his hand on the rail of the hospital crib, not touching Willa, just close to her. Like proximity was the best he could manage right now. I was wrong, he said. I looked at him. About what I wanted. He said it without looking up. I think I've known that for, I don't know how long. It was easier to say no to the whole thing than to figure out what I was actually afraid of. Nathaniel. I'm not asking anything from you right now, he said quickly. I'm not. I'm just telling you the truth because I owe you that. Because you called me tonight and that cost you something. And I know it did. And I want to be honest with you. He finally looked at me. She's mine. Yes. And you've been doing this alone for 8 months. My mother helps. And my friend, I haven't been. You know what I mean. I did. I looked down at Willa, who had shifted in her sleep, one small fist uncurling. There's something else you should know, I said. He waited. Your colleague, Sherry Delacroix. I watched his face. She came to see me. About 3 months ago. She said she knew about the pregnancy. Someone at the firm had apparently told her. And she suggested it might be in my best interest to keep it private, not to make things complicated. I said it the way I had rehearsed it, flat and clear. She said it would be better for everyone if Willa's file didn't connect back to your name. Nathaniel went very still. She said this to you. She came to my apartment. She brought coffee, actually. Very civilized. I heard my own voice. How dry it was. She said she was looking out for me. He was quiet for a long moment. The machines beeped softly. Willa breathed her even, feverish sleep breath. She's been managing my public profile for 2 years, he said. I know. She had no right. I know. I looked at him. I didn't do what she suggested, obviously. I listed you on the birth certificate, and I didn't tell anyone she came, not even my own mother. But I'm telling you now because you said you wanted the truth, and that's the truth. He stood up. He walked to the window, the one that looked out over University Avenue, and the dark shapes of buildings and the city doing its quiet January thing. He stood there for a while. I need you to understand something, he said, without turning around. Whatever I said before, whatever I thought I wanted or didn't want, none of that is more important than what's in that crib right now. That is my daughter, and I have already missed 8 months of her life, and I would very much like to not miss any more of it. That's not entirely up to you, I said. I know. She's not a project you can optimize. I know that too. He turned around, and I saw, for maybe the second time in the 10 years I had known this man, that he was not composed. His face wasn't doing the thing it always did, that careful, neutral thing that I used to think meant he wasn't feeling anything, and eventually learned meant he felt things too much to let them show. He said, I know I don't get to just walk back in. I understand that, but I'm asking if there's a version of this where I at least get to try. I looked at my daughter. She had my nose, I thought. She had his brow line, the small, serious wrinkle between the eyes that appeared when she was concentrating or unhappy. She had his hands, the long fingers, the way she held things precisely. I had noticed it for months and not let myself say it out loud, not even to myself. There might be a version, I said, but it's going to be slow. And it's going to be on her schedule, not yours. Okay. And you are going to have a conversation with Sherry Delacroix that I don't want to know the details of, but that resolves the situation. That's already happening. Tonight. The moment I leave this building. I almost smiled. I didn't let myself. By 8 the next morning, Willa's fever had broken. She woke up hungry and grumpy and very interested in the crinkle toy my mother had tucked in the hospital bag, and I fed her and held her, and felt the specific relief of a crisis that has passed. The kind that leaves you wrung out and hollow and more grateful than you know how to say. Nathaniel had stayed through the night. He'd slept in the chair, or not slept, I wasn't entirely sure. He brought me a coffee from the Tim Hortons on the ground floor. On the ground floor, at 6:30 in the morning, without asking if I wanted one, just appeared with it the way he used to leave an umbrella by the door, on days when rain was forecasted. Quiet gestures that I had not missed until I had missed them every day. When the discharge papers were done, and the nurse had gone through the follow-up instructions, and I was wrestling Willa into her snowsuit, the one with the small, bare ears, on the hood that my best friend had bought, and that I had initially thought was ridiculous, and now found impossible to remove, because Willa grabbed the ears whenever you put it on her. Nathaniel held her while I managed the zipper. He held her like he had been doing it for years, like it was the most natural thing he had ever done. He looked up and caught me staring. "Bare ears," he said. Like that explained everything. She likes them. I can see that. We stood in the discharge area of sick kids at 8:15 on a Friday morning, with my daughter between us in her ridiculous bare-ear snowsuit, and the January cold waiting outside the sliding doors, and nothing about it was simple or resolved or clean, but it was something. The beginning of something that didn't have a name yet. "I'll call you," he said. "Or, you could tell me when works." "Sunday afternoon," I said. "She's usually in a good mood after her nap." He nodded. He handed Willa back to me carefully, both hands. "The way you hold something you understand matters," he said. "She's